Hello, and welcome to another book review on Everything Read and Rated, this channel. So, a couple of days ago, I finished reading Crying in Mart by Michelle Zauner. I don't know if I'm saying that wrong or right. Apologies if I'm saying it wrong. I'd never heard of this woman before, Michelle Zauner, but she's quite well known. The reviews on the back by Mary Claire, The Times, Rukmini Iyer, Guardian, Best Food Books of 2021. I didn't even realise it was a food book. I've read it now. Claudia Roden and Ben Wilson, Sunday Times, Best Food Books 2021. So apparently this is a food book, which I didn't know, but I've read the whole thing. I'll read you the back first, because apparently it is a food book and I know nothing about it. A book of the year in the Financial Times, Sunday Times, Stylist, New York Times, Washington Post, Time and Times of India, and on pitchfork.com and vulture.com. Blimey, so it's popular. It's done very, very well. Hard to read this with this much light. As good as everyone says it is, and yes, it will have you in tears. An essential read for anybody who has lost a loved one, as well as those who haven't. That's by Mary Claire. Everyone's talking about Michelle Zauner as if being the front woman of cult indie band Japanese Breakfast wasn't enough. Michelle Zauner is fast becoming a rising literary star too, The Times. Possibly the best book I've read all year. The story of a young Korean-American woman coming to terms with the early death of her mother, and the role that food played. This is why it's a food book. And the role that food played in their often turbulent relationship. It's written with a lightness of touch, tackling grief, loss, and love in a way that I've rarely read before. Fascinating. That's from The Guardian. Rukmini Iyer. I love Michelle Zauner's beautiful, moving, and insightful book about love and loss, grief and identity, and the role of food in all that. It is brilliant. The best book I have read in the past year. Claudia Roden. Not sure who that is either. Apologies, Claudia. In a strong year for food memoir. This moving and funny book about grief, family, and Korean cooking was my favourite. I gulped it down in a day. Okay. B. Wilson, Sunday Times, Best Food Books 2021. Right, so that's what it is about, apparently. Yeah, I never knew who this woman was. Another book, this is another book that I didn't buy. Look, I got bleach on my top, see. That's what happens when you clean the kitchen too often. My wife got this book. She'll go out and buy 4 or 5 books at a time, and then as they're lying on the shelf, I just pick them up and read them. Really, really, really good. Why is it called Crying in Mart? Because Mart is the ethnic store in America where you can go to buy your ethnic goods. So this girl, Michelle, this lady, goes, and it starts in the first chapter, almost a prologue, if you will. The first chapter is about where she's likely to be found. She's likely to be found crying amongst the Korean ingredients in H Mart because it reminds her of her mother. Her mother used to take her there, and she used to cook for her and everything. Her mother does die, obviously, in the course of the book. And what really got me with this book is in the first few paragraphs, something that Michelle Zauner writes in here reminded me of something I said at my best friend's eulogy after he died, much too young. And it was that she feels anger when she sees other people with their mothers because her mother isn't around. I felt angry when my friend died, and I said that in the eulogy speech I gave at his funeral. His family asked me to write one, and that hit me. I thought, wow, that's really reminded me of that. My wife said, you probably won't enjoy this. I said, you know what, I'm really enjoying this. She said, why? I said, it reminds me of when Madge died. Madge was my best friend, which is obviously sad, but an enjoyable book nonetheless for doing that. Is it well written? I think so. She can definitely write. I had no idea she was a successful musician, although I should have figured it out because towards the end of the book she actually goes on tour. A lot of I guess you could call it a coming of age book as well, because a lot of it is about the turbulent relationship she had with her mum, and especially as a teenager, how she tried to play in bands and how it was so terrible. Her mum dies, like I said. Fittingly, the songs that actually seem to have made her a star are all based around her mother. They're all based on her mother. And it's in her mother's hometown that she eventually plays this gig, and it's like that's when she's made it. That's after her mother passed away, unfortunately. That was quite touching as well, because if you've lost parents or if you've lost friends, but especially parents, and your parents never got to see you succeed, you regret it. You wanted them to see you stand on your own feet, to make something of yourself. And I guess her mum, Michelle Zauner's mum, never actually got that. But I'm sure through the eyes of parents, whatever your kids do, you think they're fantastic. You love them. But then I know some kids, and if I was their parents, I'd think, what the fuck is wrong with you? Not just because they don't behave as I, but they do nothing. They're happy to just sit around and do absolutely nothing, and they waste their own talent. Or their own. They don't have to have. You don't have to have talent. Just do something, for goodness sake. She tried, and it's a beautiful story. And then the other thing about this book is, because it's a book about real life, the Western tradition, certainly not in books, but certainly in films, is always, oh, it's got to be a happy ending, especially when you think, oh, it's a woman's book. Now, this isn't a woman's book, but it was bought by a woman, and I think a man will be less inclined to buy it because it's written by a female, because it's called Crying, and that's not macho. You don't read books with crying in the title, god damn you. But it's a really good book, and but it's not Western. So what makes me say this is, it's not all happy and wonderful and I was beautiful and I was the prom queen and blah blah blah, or I was bullied but I came back and poured pig shit all over the bullies. No, it's real life. And so it's not, like I say sometimes to some people, this is real life, this isn't fucking Disney, right? And this is real life. And the book hits you because of that. The relationship with her father, like many relationships with parents, it's not ideal. And she writes about that, but she writes about it in a very accessible way. How do you write about a parent dying in an accessible way? Well, you've got to be pretty damn good, and she is. I like the way she writes. And in the end, it's a very relatable story. It's quite uplifting. And, it's not one of these, everything's going to be great in the end and blah, blah, blah books. Although things do turn out okay in the end. Another thing I really liked in the book was how she describes the kind of blossoming of the relationship between her and her husband Peter, how they met and everything. It's nice, it's romantic, it's real. It's I can relate to it. And nowadays dating just seems to be about find someone you think is sexy on this dating app or that dating app. They don't turn out to be Prince Charming. Guess what, retard? The profile they put on the dating site isn't them. To know people, you have to fucking meet them, right? And some people get disappointed, and then in their 20s it's going on, and then in their 30s they haven't found a partner, and then in their 40s, why does nobody love me? Because you won't stick around, you won't do the work, you won't put out with the shit. There's a very good this is actually an article. You're gonna think, what kind of stuff does this guy read? This was in an article, I think it was on Medium, and someone said, if you're thinking of leaving your wife for your mistress, try farting in front of your wife and see what happens. Yeah. So metaphorically, in this relation, in modern dating, it's like, oh, someone farted, so oh, they're no good. Guess what? People produce gas. Going off topic, but kind of still on topic, because the way she writes about the relationships is good. Would I tell a friend to read this book if they're asking for something to read? Yes, definitely. How do I rate this book? I'll give it I was going to say 8 out of 10, but I hesitated. I don't know why I hesitated. And is it a food book? Yeah, I guess so. She talks about Korean food. I never read it as a food book. She can write. It's a good story. It's a relatable story. It's a moving story. If she wrote something else, I'd read it. I might even go and check out Japanese Breakfast, her band, or whatever it is. Which is quite uplifting to know she made it, because how much fun would it be to write music and actually have people want to listen to it? I think it would be fantastically fun. So that's the book. I'm giving it 8 out of 10. A confident 8 out of 10. Michelle Zauner, Crying in Mart. It didn't make me cry, but I was going to say it would probably make you cry. And it's a good read, and I recommend it. Okay, it's a 9-minute book review. That's a bit long. Okay, hope you got something from that. That's what the book looks like. That's who wrote it at the top. I'd never heard of her, and I'm probably one of the only few people who hasn't, but there you go. Highly recommended.